A former CIA officer's 28-year intelligence career provides crucial insights into Russia's global operations and current security challenges. His extensive experience, including service in Moscow, reveals how Russia maintains an outsized intelligence apparatus despite its relatively modest economy. Russian intelligence capabilities survived the Soviet collapse because the services controlled Communist Party finances and compromising information. Their influence expanded dramatically when Vladimir Putin, himself a former intelligence officer, rose to power. The officer emphasizes that Russia's intelligence network remains disproportionately large compared to countries of similar economic size, like Italy. A fundamental distinction exists between U.S. and Russian intelligence approaches. American services focus primarily on collecting and analyzing information to support policy decisions. In contrast, Russian intelligence pursues a much broader agenda encompassing domestic repression, international subversion, disinformation campaigns, election interference, and support for extremist groups that can destabilize Western democracies. The recruitment of assets also differs significantly between the two nations. U.S. intelligence typically targets individuals with access to specific information priorities, for example, details about nuclear programs or military capabilities. Russian operations cast a far wider net, seeking not only traditional intelligence sources but also individuals who can spread disinformation, influence decision-makers, and manipulate social media networks to shape public opinion. Russian intelligence actively works to create false narratives and sow discord among adversaries. Historical examples include spreading conspiracy theories like claims that the U.S. Defense Department created AIDS. This approach continues today through sophisticated social media operations and attempts to influence political discourse in Western nations. The officer expresses serious concerns about recent U.S. intelligence leadership appointments. He specifically criticizes the selection of Tulsi Gabbard as Director of National Intelligence, citing her lack of intelligence experience, unusual political transitions, consumption of Russian state media, and support for controversial figures like Edward Snowden. The potential appointment of Kash Patel to lead the FBI raises similar concerns about inexperience and partisan approaches to intelligence work. The DNI role, created after 9/11, oversees 16 different intelligence agencies including the CIA, NSA, and various military intelligence branches. This position requires sophisticated management experience and deep understanding of intelligence operations. The officer argues that placing inexperienced political appointees in such crucial positions threatens national security capabilities. Regarding Russians who choose to work with U.S. intelligence, the officer reveals they often differ from conventional espionage stereotypes. Rather than recruiting compromised or troubled individuals, the most valuable Russian assets are typically well-educated, capable professionals who become disillusioned with their government's corruption and repression. Many believe they serve Russia's true interests by opposing Putin's regime, which they see as betraying their country's potential. These sources are often motivated by Putin's strategic mistakes, including the catastrophic costs of the Ukraine war, economic decline, international isolation, and growing dependence on China. The officer estimates Russian casualties in Ukraine sometimes reach thousands per day, exceeding total U.S. losses in Afghanistan over 20 years. The officer addresses arguments about potential U.S.-Russia friendship, particularly claims that America should align with Russia against China. He dismisses this as unrealistic, noting Putin's fundamental hostility to Western values and determination to overthrow the current international order. While Putin desires recognition as a world leader of equal status to U.S. presidents, genuine partnership would require regime change in Moscow. Regarding the Russia-China relationship, the officer sees it as an alliance of convenience that ultimately benefits Beijing more than Moscow. He argues that Russia's military and economic decline means it cannot serve as a meaningful counterweight to Chinese power, unlike during the Cold War era when U.S.-China rapprochement significantly impacted global politics. The officer also discusses Russian intelligence's integration with organized crime, describing Russia as a mafia state, where criminal enterprises operate with state protection in exchange for serving Kremlin interests. This includes cybercriminals who are allowed to target Western institutions while supporting Russian intelligence operations. The discussion touches on controversial historical events, including allegations that Putin's FSB orchestrated apartment bombings that helped secure his rise to power. While the officer cannot definitively confirm this, he notes Russia's history of sacrificing civilians for state interests makes such operations plausible. The conversation concludes with the officer describing his post-CIA work in entertainment, where he helps create more authentic depictions of espionage operations in film and television. This effort aims to improve public understanding of intelligence work by incorporating real-world expertise from the beginning of creative projects rather than as an afterthought. Throughout the discussion, the officer emphasizes that while Putin must project strength to maintain power, Russia faces fundamental weaknesses in its strategic position. The combination of military losses, economic sanctions, international isolation, and growing dependence on China suggests long-term challenges for the Russian state, despite its continued ability to project power through intelligence operations and information warfare.